Hi guys, hi, how's it going? How you doing today? Hopefully today finds you well. Today we're going to do the next video in my palette roulette series in which I am reviewing a palette or two or three, and I tell you all the things, the good, the bad, the ugly. I share pictures of the eye looks I was able to create, and I show you swatches when we talk about all the things, and then we pick another palette and we do it all over again. And I hope that sounds like something you're interested in. If it does, please keep on watching. For those of you new here today, hi, my name is Donna. I'm a lover of all things high and colorful beauty and self-care. Ultimately, I'm just out here talking about makeup because this is my self-care and I enjoy this journey. And I hope that you all also enjoy being a part of it. And if you do, I hope that you'll want to subscribe before you go because I'd love to welcome you into my YouTube fam. And with that said, let's roll into this palette roulette where I am reviewing these three palettes. We got ourselves a handful today. My daughter is taking a shower, so I'm hoping that y'all don't hear the shower noises because it's right over there that her bathroom is connected to that wall. So here we go. Today we are going to be reviewing the Unearthly Dreamer palette, the Unearthly Not Normal palette, and the Lunar Beauty Nude Prism palette, and I cannot wait to talk to you guys about them. Like, when I do these palette roulettes, I really come at it from a red, yellow, green perspective so that I know where I'm ranking them at the end of the year. And all three of these palettes landed in the green, which means that they're all ranked really, really well. That being said, I don't think that you can get this one anymore because they just launched the Not Normal Reimagined or whatever it is, and I want that palette so bad. But at the same time, I have this one, so I'm just not sure that it's something I should be spending my money on because all of these shades are in the new palette as well. So I'm going to start with the Unearthly Dreamer palette, and y'all, when I finally pulled the trigger and purchased these palettes, I was so dang excited to get them into my collection. This was probably one of the most anticipated hauls for myself, and the biggest reason why is because all of the YouTubers that I watch talk very highly of Unearthly Cosmetics. So I could not wait to try them for myself. So this is the packaging of the Unearthly Dreamer palette. It's got this beautiful artwork on it, and the artwork was created by Miss U Pacey. I'm so sorry that I am butchering that, but I will have her handle down in the text because I think that this artwork is beautiful. And this is the back of the palette, and there's a whole lot of words on the back of the palette that just really describe the ingredients that are in the shades, the distributed by, section that it tells you all the things about Unearthly, as well as that it is cruelty-free, Leaping Bunny certified, and has a 24-month shelf life. This is also vegan as far as I can tell. This is a palette that does cost $60. It has 12 shades in it. 6 of them are mattes, 6 of them are shimmers, and it did launch Holiday 2023. I would like to now bring in, instead of going off on a tangent about this palette specifically, I would also like to bring in the Not Normal palette and talk about that one really quick as well, because ultimately my thoughts and feelings about the shades and the formulations of the shades are the exact same from both palettes. I didn't feel like there was any inconsistencies in their formulation from palette to palette. So it would be the exact same. So I'm not going to waste your time with saying the same thing over and over. This is the Unearthly Not Normal palette. This one you cannot get anymore. I cannot remember how much I paid for it, if I'm honest with you. But I do know that this launched, I believe, in 2021. With their initial brand name of Alien Cosmetics. I love this artwork, and this artwork also, I will put the artist's name down here in text, but this is Nikki Lee is Me. that created this artwork, and it is just so beautiful, you guys. And on the back of the palette, it's just all the words telling you about the formulations, as well as that they are Leaping Bunny certified, they are cruelty free. This one I do believe is also vegan, and it also has a 24-month shelf life. So when you open it up, there are 12 shades in this palette, and this one 100% speaks fall, in my humble opinion. It had a little bit of differences in like color story between the two palettes, although I do think that they came together and married quite well in how I was able to work with both of them together. So there's that. Of the two palettes, I think that my favorite one to utilize was Dreamer, but only because of the color story, not because of the formulation or anything else. The Not Normal palette is very, very great. I just think that it isn't something that is a go-to everyday palette for me, whereas Dreamer could be. I did like pull from this palette a lot to support some of the eye looks that I was doing, but I really, when I sat down and tried to create one cohesive eye look out of this palette, there was only like a couple that I could get that I felt like made sense. So I don't believe that this one has the variety that I need it to have to be like a standalone palette in my collection. That's not here nor there. Like, I have zero problems with that. I do believe that these mattes are fantastic mattes. They are buildable, they are blendable, they are pigmented shadows. They have really great wear time, 10+ hours. With a primer, I would say 8+ hours before you see visible fading without a primer. And the shimmers are really, really easy also to use. And the one thing that I did notice about these palettes is there's really not any fallout to speak of in terms of, you know, powder in the pan, nor fallout all over your face, which isn't normal for pigmented shadows like these. There's either a lot of fallout on your face or there's a lot of dustiness in the pan, and I didn't see that in either scenario. I didn't really ever have to wipe off any kind of fallout. I am a person that does my eyeshadow first just in case, and it was not ever a problem. The shimmers do not require a glitter glue in this palette, in these palettes, which I thought was phenomenal to be impactful. Now, do I think that they were more impactful with the glitter glue? Sure. But I also know that they were super impactful in and of themselves without a glitter glue. I didn't feel like I needed to put a glitter glue down first to get that shine and impact that I wanted from the shimmers. The other thing about that too is that putting them on my face, again, I didn't really experience any kind of fallout with the shimmers in those palettes, and that is phenomenal because I am not a glitter all over my face kind of person. I don't love it. I didn't feel like it fell out on application, but I also didn't feel like it fell out throughout the day. There wasn't any idiosyncrasies with them. Once they were there, they were there. No creasiness, no budging. It was really an ideal formulation to work with, to be honest. I had zero problems with it. The other thing about the shimmers is that I found that it was super easy to apply them with a dry brush, which never happens. Usually shimmers are only impactful with a wet brush or over the top of a tacky base, and I didn't feel that way with these guys. I think that they're just a little bit different in formulation in that, I mean, they're not super powdery in the pan. I just stuck my finger into this one and into this one right here, and they're not super shimmery in the pan, but they also don't fall out all over your face, but they also are like super wet looking, even like on an unprimed, untacky based surface. So I don't know what it is about these shimmers, but I found them to be pleasurable to deal with and not necessarily, like, sometimes shimmers are that same kind of way. If they're more like of a satin formulation than they are a shimmer formulation. I felt like these were very shimmery, very in your face, but also went on like a satin maybe does. So I think I said for the other palette, it does have 6 mattes and 6 shimmers. This one has 8 mattes and 4 shimmers. And there are a few of these that are considered, you know, those not safe for eye use kind of formulations, which are pressed pigments, and they have to tell you don't put them on your eyes in the United States, but in the UK it's a totally different story. So on the back of the palette it does list the ones that are not eyeshadows as pressed pigments for your cheeks, and it lists the ones that are eyeshadows as eyeshadows, and that is why this is called just a pigment palette versus an eyeshadow palette. There are 4 of them that are supposedly not eye safe, and out of this one there are 5. And I do point those out to you when we are doing the swatches. One thing that I like to do when I am, you know, bringing a new brand onto my channel is talk a little bit about how they were founded and where they're from. These were founded by Amanda and Christopher Hayden out of Brooklyn, New York in 2017. So they've done a really great job of building up this really amazing like indie makeup brand in the makeup space through 2017, through COVID 2020, and still making it last through all the turmoil that happened throughout that time frame. They built their brand based on blending artwork and makeup together, and that is why their palettes have like the most beautiful artwork on the planet, and they have a slew of different artists that they work with to come up with the artistry that is on their palettes. One thing that I appreciate about the palettes is the fact that their packaging is just so beautiful. Like even when I think of the, you know, the cartridge that this one came in, like it is truly like a trinket style box. So not all of them came in this kind of box, but this was, you know, from the brand as it was named Alien Cosmetics, and I'm sure that the new one is probably going to come in a slightly more similar to this kind of packaging, right? It does have 18 shadows in it, so, and all of these ones exist in that. So of the 18 shadows, I think 18 shadows that are in it, if it's 18, all of these are also in that palette. So I don't know that I need the new, I want the new one. I just don't know that I need it because I just purchased this one. Like they just ventured into my collection recently. So with that said, I could totally see these being some of my favorite, more colorful eyeshadows just because they're so easy to wear and use. And I think what I want to showcase is just like the sheer, I used the poop out of this palette, and just the sheer like lack of like powderiness in this palette. I think that we can see some like flecks coming from like this shade here, but there's just like truly no powderiness. There's no like huge dips in some of these shimmers. Like they're a good firmly pressed formula that has no powder and no fallout. And like with colors like some of these ones over here, the fallout can be intense. I will say that this one did stain my eyes quite a bit, and this one also, specifically that green, stained my eyes quite a bit. I will also say that this one kind of shocked me a little bit because it looks more like deep mauvey, but on an eye look is more brown than it is mauvey. So I think that that threw me off, but I truly love these palettes so dang much, and really glad that there are other ones in my drawer of shame ready for me to start using. And I think that there was one of my subscribers told me to pull out Dreamer first, and I'm so glad that I used this one over the last several weeks. Like some of the most beautiful eye looks, in my humble opinion, came from that palette or a conjunction of the 3 of these palettes. So With that said, let's look at the swatches for Dreamer. And as per norm, we're going to just be looking at the swatches here while I go over the shades. So the first shade is Night Owl, and it is a matte cool brown, and that is one of the shades that is listed as a pressed pigment, which is quote unquote not eye safe. Then we have Imaginary, which is a shifty pinky golden shimmer. Truly a beautiful shade on the eye. The next one is Muse. This is a deep berry mauve matte. Beautiful shadow. Then we have Tranquil, which is an iridescent purple pink bluey shimmer. This one is a little bit flaky in the pan, but I didn't find that it transposed onto my eye in that way. The next one is Engulf. This one is a matte navy. This one is a beautiful matte navy, and I think stained my eyes so dang bad, but isn't listed as a pressed pigment, so who knows. The next one is Drift. This is a metallic gunmetal with blue sparkle, and is such a beautiful shadow. It kind of reminded me of a shade out of the Carly Bible palette, only less chunky, so I really appreciated that palette. The next one is Float. Float is a metallic soft baby pink with some silver reflex shimmers in there, and it is a beautiful toned down rose gold, and it is what is also listed as a pressed pigment. Then we have Soothe, which is a milky matte pink shade. Then we have Fantasy, which is a shifty blackened plum with kind of pinky goldy sparkle. It is listed as a pressed pigment, not safe for eyes. And then we have Slumber, which is a matte blackened eggplant purple. One of my favorites in this palette, to be honest. Then we have Dream State, another favorite for me in this palette. I wanted to put this on every single eye look I use. This is a beautiful silver with like multi-dimensional flecks of like glitter or mica or something in it. Like it could look silver, it could look purple, it could look pinky, it could look blue. It's just dependent on how the light was hitting it. It was such a beautiful shade. I wouldn't say that it's a multi-chrome, but it was beautiful. And this one is also listed as a pressed pigment. And lastly, we have Clouded, which is a matte mid-tone gray. Also considered a pressed pigment, not safe for eye, and was a really good shadow to have in this palette, honestly. I don't 100% love grays, but that gray was actually a really beautiful gray, and it went well with that blue and that purple and even that Muse like mauve-y tone as well. Loved that palette. So now let's look at the shadows for this one. So the first one we have is Day Job. Day Job is a neutral, sandy, soft brown matte. Then we have Topaz, which is a chartreuse shimmer. It's beautiful chartreuse. I do think that it leans a little too goldy for me, but I do like it. Then we have Gemini, which is a green gold shifty shimmer. This is a beautiful, beautiful shade and looks wet every single time you use it, and it has a little bit of a transparent base, so it doesn't like showcase any color unless you turn your head just right. It is amazing. And then we have Sultry, which is the first of the pressed pigments in this palette. It is a matte aubergine purple, and I think it was enough of a blue based purple to go well with the purple in the Dreamer palette, but light enough to blend out that purple and look different and not the same. So really love that. I use that shade just as often as I used the Slumber shade in the Dreamer palette. Then we have Basic, which is a cream matte with a bit of like grayness to it. I would say that this is a gray toned beige. Then we have Emerald, which is a grass colored like almost primary green matte. I love green as one of my favorite colors, but I didn't necessarily wholeheartedly love this green. And I don't really love primary colors. So let's just preface that there. This green is one that is considered a pressed pigment. So And this green did stain my eyes quite a bit, but no irritation, you guys. Even I've used every single one of these shadows on my eyes and there was no irritation. There just was some, you know, bits of staining that happened, which happens all the time, honestly. Then we have Exercise, which is I mean, it's listed as a matte chartreuse. I think it's more of a matte mustard yellow. It is in my eye look today. I by no means think that this is a chartreuse. I definitely think this is more of just a like brown mustard color. Then we have Taupe, which is a silvery shimmer color with kind of a little bit of a lavender kick to it. Then we have Smoke, which is a charcoal matte. It looks very deep brown more than it looks charcoal. Charcoal, I think, is a little bit more black than brown is, and this one I think leans a lot more brown than black. Then we have Emotions, which is the listed as a pressed pigment in here. This is a lavender gray pewter shimmer. I do think that there is a lot of similarity between this shimmer and Taupe, but I think that this one is definitely more lavender than the wee bit of like shifty to lavender that you're getting from Taupe. Then we have Sage, which is a beautiful sage green matte, and then we have Grunge, which is also listed as a pressed pigment and is a burgundy matte, but I would say that burgundy leans a lot more brown, like I said earlier when I was talking about the palettes in and of themselves. So those are the two Unearthly palettes, and with those two palettes I did bring in the Lunar Beauty Nude Prism palette because I needed a little bit of semblance of normalcy, right? This is a palette that is full of just really great nude neutral shadows. So this palette is a $48 palette, and it does have 0.9 ounces of product in it, or 0.05 ounces per pan, and launched in the spring of 2022. It is cruelty-free, it is vegan, and on the back of the palette you can see that it just says Nude Prism. It has some information, then over here it says cruelty-free and vegan. One thing that I thought was interesting is that this palette was made in China, and I think all the other Lunar Beauty palettes are made in the US. So I was really concerned about how this palette was going to perform based on that fact, but I was pleasantly surprised that this palette really performed quite well. It is, for the most part, what is on my eyes today. The only thing that is not from this palette is this yellow up here that is from the Not Normal palette, that kind of mustardy yellow that I said was a mustard yellow and not a chartreuse. I think that you can see that, and I looked, it definitely comes across as a yellow versus a chartreuse. I think the performance overall with this was best over a primer. The shimmers, I do believe that you need a tacky base. Today I am not wearing a tacky base with it, but I can see, like when I look up close and personal to what's going on my eye looks, I can see that there's a little bit of like creasiness starting to happen. But I mean, it's truly not horrible. And if you go in with your finger, which I feel like these do best with, and kind of tap it into place, and then just take a brush and lightly go over the top of it to blend it along the edges, it does perform better. These shimmers, I'm getting ahead of myself. This palette's presentation is beautiful. I love the, like, what are these called? Cottonwoods or whatever they're called. Beautiful, like orange blossoms. I think that's what they're called. And then this moon is just like every other Lunar Beauty palette. It's got a moon that kind of sticks out. I think that's like his MO right now. This is the palette. This does bend all the way back. It has a nice magnetic clasp, which is the same for the other two. They also bend all the way back as well. This is the palette. So really beautiful 18 pans of beautiful neutral tones on the lighter end, on the deeper end, and then you have all of your shimmers. One thing I would say that is different about these shimmers than what I have noticed in the past for Lunar Beauty is I think that you can see it there. Like if you stick your finger in, you don't even have to push super hard. They kind of move around a lot like a Super Shock does. So with that said, I do think that they are beautiful and they perform so beautifully on an unprimed eye, but I do think that, you know, to keep them where you want them to be, basically, you do need that tacky base, that glue baseline, not to get the impact that you want, but to keep them where you want them to be on your eye look, because they do just kind of move around, if I'm honest with you. I don't think that it was awful or problematic. I just think that that is a difference that I see between these shimmers and some of the other shimmers that I have in my Lunar Beauty collection, because you all know I'm a Manny fan. This is 18 shades, 6 of which are shimmers. The rest are mattes, and it's all neutral tones. Like I said, lighter neutral tones, deeper neutral tones, and then all of the shimmers that you could have. I do think that between these 3 shimmers, like there's a lot of redundancy in those 3 shimmers, and I do think that I would have liked to have seen like even a more mauve tone shimmer or a deeper shimmer out of any one of those 3 shadows. Of the 3 of them, I really do like these 2 a lot. So this one I think could be the one that went, and that is of course the more gold of the shadows. So it makes sense because I don't love gold. These are slightly powdery in the pan as far as the mattes go, but there is no fallout that was noticeable in my humble opinion. And the powderiness in the pan did not equate to powderiness on your face or having to like completely, you know, reapply, build and build and build, because it was just dusting away. They are buildable, however, they are blendable. I think that they're really pigmented shadows. No Fuss formula is what I have down here. That's super easy to use. The formula seems a little bit more for building than it is straight up pigmentation. Like I did have to build and build and build into this one to make it seamless in the way that I wanted it to be seamless, but that's not to say that you can't go straight in with one shadow, pop a shimmer on your lid from this palette and have a beautiful eye look, because there was a couple of days that I did that as well, and it was beautiful. The shade range in here is super versatile, goes from really light to really deep. We have kind of a basic peachy beige clear down to black, so not quite white, but really light to really deep, and therefore there's not like a lot of issues with redundancy in these shades. All of these showed up very differently on the eye look than each other. I would say that I was a little bit worried about these 3 shadows right here, because these 3 specifically look like they could look very similar on an eye look. What I would say about these though too is that as pink as this looks, like some of these shadows really leaned very almost brown than they did pink, which is totally okay with me. But I was just a little bit shocked by it, to be honest. But because we have shades like this and then this like bright pink here, you could make it more pinky if you wanted it to be more pinky. And the shimmers, like I said, applied best with a finger or a wet brush or over a tacky base. I don't think that you need a base to make them work. Obviously, I'm wearing one today. But I do think that if you're not wearing a base, you need to be prepared for it to kind of move around on your eye space and potentially cause some craziness. So that tacky base is really going to help with the longevity of how it performs on your eye. Performs on a primed or not primed eye pretty much the same as far as wear time goes. It's going to be roughly 8-ish hours prior to fading, whether you have a primer or not underneath it. However, like if you're wearing a primer, there's not really any creasiness that happens, no movement, no travel of the shadows, and there's definitely none of these shadows that stained my eyes, not even some of these deeper tones down here. I do want to say that I really appreciate that these deeper tones were in this palette, because it helped really with the versatility of the shadows in this palette. Like if the brown wasn't getting quite as dark as I wanted it to be, much like in this eye look, I just popped a little bit of black in there and we called it good. This black is a really good black, just saying. So with that said, let's talk about the shimmers in this palette. So the first is Bear. Bear is a matte peachy pink cream color. Then we have Cherry Blossom. This is a matte baby petal pink. Then we have I'm Shy. This is a matte light peach. We have Vibes, which is a matte warm brown. Then we have Apricot, which is a matte soft deep peachy brown. Then we have Sakura, which is a matte mauvey brown. In the next row, we have So Icy, which is a white shimmer. It has a little bit of golden fleck to it. Then we have Your Golden, which is a warm gold shimmer. We have Laura, which is a rose gold shimmer. Sam, which is a pink shimmer. Then we have Expose, which is, or Expose, I think is what it's supposed to be, which is a warm copper shimmer. And then we have Star-Crossed, which is an antique gold shimmer. I hope that you can see the same thing that I said earlier, in that those three like slash goldy coppers, there's too much redundancy there. They all look the same on an eye look. So I could have all three of them on my eye look today and you would never know the difference. So then we have last row Milk Tea, which is a matte cool toned pinky brown mauve. It does lean really brown, honestly, for as pink as it looks. We have Tease, which is a matte like caramely brown. We have Classic, which is a matte milk chocolate brown. Then we have Bloom for You, which is a matte like oxblood burgundy shadow. A little more, I would say, brown than red, which makes it more oxblood than burgundy. And then we have Moody, which is a matte deep walnut shade, a really beautiful deep dark brown. And then we have Deeper, which is a matte black. And I think that you can see, I mean, that the shadows in this palette are really very beautiful. And it's funny because the Patrick Starr One Size Visionary palette, I remember saying in that review that there was quite a bit of brown in this palette, but there were different like little idiosyncrasies to the browns that made me believe that these were like unique to my collection, in that, you know, how like maybe yellow they leaned, or kind of orange they leaned, or maybe even had a little bit of grungy greenness to them. And I do think that, you know, some of the shadows in here could maybe have those aspects to it, although I do feel like this one is maybe a little bit more orangey brown than it is like yellowy brown, but it is in my eye look today and it looks very yellowy brown to be honest. I just really had a beautiful time with this palette and could see this being a staple in my collection, and it doesn't surprise me. Like, I am a fan of Lunar Beauty, a fan of Manny MUA. What did surprise me though is that this palette, like I said, was made in China, whereas all the other Lunar Beauty palettes have been made in the US, and I don't feel like we let go of anything in our formulation to make it happen from a cheaper perspective, right? Because this is a $48 eyeshadow palette for 18 eyeshadows, and I think that that's roughly the same price as most of Manny's other palettes that have 15 eyeshadows. So I'm really thankful that I found that in a random JCP with, you know, some of the other, like, I didn't know that JCPenney, once Sephora moved out of JCPenney, was carrying makeup at all anymore, and happened to walk into their beauty section and see like this whole like 6-foot section of Lunar Beauty. And I was like, yes. They also had Sigma and RMS and all those things, so I was really excited to see it. With that said, I am gonna go pick a couple new palettes, and I will be right back. I think that, you know, this is not going to be the most exciting one next time, because I am getting 3 palettes out of that Oh the Shame drawer that have been in there for 900 years. And I really just have been pushing back and pushing back for the newness that's coming into my collection. I really just need to get them out of that drawer and figure out how I feel about them. So I am going to bring in 3 palettes that we really should have gone through years ago at this point. So we have the Hip Dot Witchy Worm that came to me in a FabFitFun, I do believe. Then I am also pulling in the Disney Mickey and Friends Truth Be Bold 9-pan palette by Morphe. This is going to be my color. And then I am also bringing in Sydney Grace's Love's Journey. When I initially received this palette, it wasn't a palette that I was going to pull for because it is very cool tone heavy. But I have been leaning into cool tones a lot lately. So I am going to bring in those 3 palettes, and I hope that you're here for it. Like, I think I'm really excited about this one, The Witchy Worms by Hip Dot, because I've heard such wonderful things about it. And this one looks fun to play with because there's imprints on almost every single shadow in this palette. And then this one, of course, is going to be my color because none of that is in either one of these. So not super fall, not super exciting, but I do hope that you guys will want to come back and watch how I feel about these palettes when we come back, probably mid-month next month, and walk through these and then pull some new. I need to get these out of my Oh the Shame drawer because I know what I've got sitting in my what I got for my birthday, and it's exciting, and I know I'm going to want to pull for them. So I need to pull these out of my Oh the Shame drawer. So with that said, I hope that you guys enjoyed the video. Please let me know down in the comment section how you feel about the palettes I just reviewed or the palettes that I'm about to review. I would love to hear your thoughts and opinions. I hope that you enjoyed it so much that you're going to subscribe to the channel if you're not already subscribed, and turn on those notifications so that you're updated every single time I have a video that goes live. And with that said, guys, just thank you so much for being here today. I hope that you and yours are well. I hope that you are all healthy, safe, and getting along as best you can. I hope that you are all loving each other, being kind humans, and just living your best life. And until next time, bye, friends.